What if the moment you thought your life was over was actually your second chance? After a painful divorce in Nevada, I found myself lost, struggling with simple English, love, and starting over in a country that didn't feel like home until a small habit, a simple story, and an unexpected connection slowly changed everything you're about to hear.
Ly hôn ở Nevada.
You know that feeling when everything ends at the same time? Your relationship, your routine, your confidence. That was me. I walked out of that building and thought, now what? Not in a poetic way. Not in a hopeful way. Just empty. I am alone now. That was the first sentence I said to myself in English.
Short. Clear. True.
Life in the United States sounds exciting when you watch it online. Big roads, bright lights, friendly smiles. But real life? It's quiet. It's confusing. Especially when your English is not strong. People speak fast. They use slang. They laugh, and you don't always understand why. In Nevada, everything looked beautiful, but felt distant. The dry air, the wide desert, the long highways. I had space everywhere except inside my heart. Psychology has a simple explanation for this. When you go through a breakup or divorce, your brain reacts like it lost something important for survival. It's not just emotional, it's biological. Your brain releases stress hormones like cortisol. You feel tired, anxious, and disconnected. And when you are also in a foreign country, your brain works even harder. New language, new culture, new rules. It's like trying to run while learning how to walk again. That's why I couldn't focus. Even simple English felt difficult. Can I order this? Sorry, can you repeat? I don't understand. These sentences became my daily survival kit. At a small coffee shop one morning, I tried to order breakfast. The woman behind the counter smiled and asked, "What can I get for you?" Simple question, right? But my mind froze. I knew the words. I studied them before. But in that moment, everything disappeared. Egg sandwich.
And a coffee. Black.
I spoke slowly. She waited. She nodded. Sure thing. That small moment felt like a victory. Not because of the food, but because I didn't give up. Here's something interesting. Studies in language learning show that emotional stress reduces memory recall. That means when you feel nervous or sad, your brain literally blocks the words you already know. So it's not that you are bad at English. It's that your brain is protecting you in a very inconvenient way. Basically, your brain is like, we are in danger.
Forget grammar.
Just survive. And I was surviving, not living.
Just surviving.
At night, my apartment felt too big. Silence can be loud when you don't have someone to share it with. I would sit on the floor, open my phone, and listen to simple English videos. Slow stories. Easy sentences. Not because I wanted to study, but because I didn't want to feel alone. This is my story. I wake up every morning. I try again. These sentences were simple, but they stayed with me. I started repeating them, quietly, sometimes out loud. My pronunciation was not perfect. My grammar was not correct. But something strange happened. I felt a little better. Not happy. Not yet. But less broken. You see, when you repeat simple sentences, your brain starts to feel safe again. It recognizes patterns. It understands structure. And slowly, confidence comes back. Not like a loud explosion, but like a small light in a dark room. That was the beginning. Not a big change. Not a dramatic moment. Just a quiet decision. I will not give up. Not on life. Not on English. Nevada didn't change. My past didn't disappear. The pain was still there, but something inside me moved just a little. And sometimes that's enough. Because starting over doesn't begin with a big plan. It begins with one small sentence you choose to believe. I can try again. And honestly, at that moment, that was the bravest English sentence I knew. Alone in a foreign land. Have you ever walked through a crowded place and still felt completely invisible? That was me in Nevada, surrounded by people but somehow not seen, not heard, not understood. After the divorce, the silence didn't just live in my apartment. It followed me everywhere, into grocery stores, onto buses, even into my own thoughts. I am okay. I said that sentence a lot, but it wasn't true. Mornings were the hardest. The sun in Nevada rises bright and fast, like it has somewhere important to be. But I didn't. I would wake up, look at the ceiling, and feel that heavy question again. What am I doing here? Simple question. Complicated feeling. You might think living in America automatically gives you confidence. New country, new opportunities, new life. But here's the truth no one tells you. When you don't understand the language well, everything feels like a test you didn't study for. At the supermarket, I stood in front of shelves for too long. So many choices. So many labels. I tried to read everything. Low fat, organic, gluten-free. I knew these words separately, but together? Confusing. A man next to me grabbed what he needed in seconds. I stood there for 10 minutes. Not because I was slow, but because my brain was translating everything like a machine from another time. This is something called cognitive load. When you use a second language, your brain works harder to process information. Every word, every sentence, every sign, it all needs extra effort. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack all day. That's what using English felt like for me. No wonder I was tired even when I did nothing. And then there were conversations. Or attempts at conversations. One afternoon, my neighbor smiled and said, "Hey, how's it going?" Simple, right? But my brain didn't hear, "How are you?" It heard, "How's it going?" One fast, long sound. I panicked for 1 second. Then I answered, "Yes." He looked confused. I smiled awkwardly. He nodded politely. And we both walked away. That moment stayed in my head all day. Why did I say yes? What was the correct answer? Why is English so fast? Later, I learned the answer could be simple. Good, thanks. Or even easier. Not bad. 2 words. That's it. But in real life, when your brain is under stress, even 2 words can feel like a mountain. At night, the loneliness felt different. During the day, it was noisy and uncomfortable. At night, it was quiet but deeper, like a slow wave. I started talking to myself more. I will go outside tomorrow. I will speak 1 sentence. I will try. These were not big goals. No grammar rules. No long vocabulary lists. Just small promises. Because here's something important. When your life feels out of control, your brain looks for something simple it can manage. That's why small habits work better than big plans. Science calls this behavioral activation. You don't wait to feel better. You do small actions first, and feelings follow. So I created a tiny routine. Wake up, drink water, listen to a short English story. Repeat one sentence. That's it. No pressure.
No perfection.
One morning, I listened to a story about a woman starting over. Her English was simple, just like mine. She is scared, but she keeps going. That sentence hit me. I repeated it 3 times. Slowly. She is scared, but she keeps going. Something about saying it out loud made it real. Not just her story, but mine too. Days passed. Not dramatically. Not like in movies.
No sudden transformation.
But small things changed. At the coffee shop, I didn't panic as much. Coffee, please. Thank you. Have a good day. These sentences became easier. Not perfect, but natural. And something interesting happened. People smiled more when I spoke, even if my English wasn't perfect. Not because I was fluent, but because I was trying. There's a psychological principle called the effort effect. People appreciate effort, especially when it's genuine. When you try to speak, even with mistakes, others often respond with kindness. That changed everything for me. I stopped trying to sound perfect. I started trying to connect. Big difference. One evening, I sat on a bench outside, watching the sky turn orange over the Nevada desert.
The air was dry.
The world was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely lost. I am here, I said softly. Not I am alone. Not I am broken. Just, I am here. And somehow, that felt stronger. Because being here means you haven't given up.
You're still in the story.
Still moving, even if slowly. And maybe that's the real beginning, not when everything is fixed, but when you decide to stay. To stay in a new country. To stay with a new language. To stay with yourself. Because running away is easy. But staying, trying, speaking one small sentence at a time, that takes courage. And, without realizing it, I was becoming just a little bit braver every day. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped waiting for it to be easy. I just kept going. Slowly. Quietly. Honestly. And sometimes, that's exactly how a new life begins. English was my barrier. There's a strange kind of frustration when words live clearly in your mind, but disappear the moment you try to speak. Not because they're gone, but because something inside you blocks them. That was my reality in Nevada. English wasn't just a language anymore. It became a wall between me and the world. I know this. I learned this. But I can't say it. That silent gap between knowing and speaking? That's where fear builds its home. After my divorce, my confidence didn't just drop, it collapsed. And when confidence disappears, even the simplest sentence feels heavy. You start overthinking everything. Every word becomes a risk. Every conversation feels like a test you might fail. One afternoon, I stood in front of a self-checkout machine at a grocery store. I had done this before. I knew the steps.
Scan. Pay. Leave.
Simple. But the machine spoke. Please scan your next item. I froze for a second. Not because I didn't understand, but because my brain suddenly went blank. A woman behind me was waiting. I felt pressure rising. Why am I nervous? It's just a machine. But pressure doesn't need logic. It just needs a moment. I scanned too fast. The system beeped loudly. Unexpected item in bagging area. Now I was stressed.
I'm sorry.
I don't know. I whispered, even though the machine couldn't hear me. A staff member came over and fixed it in seconds. She smiled and said, "You're good." 2 simple words. But I didn't feel good. I felt small. Moments like that may seem insignificant, but when they happen again and again, they slowly build a belief in your mind. My English is not good enough. I am not good enough. And that belief becomes more powerful than reality. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. When you feel embarrassed or anxious, your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, activates. It tells your body, this is dangerous. Your heart beats faster. Your muscles tighten. And your thinking brain, the part responsible for language, starts to slow down. So even if you know the words, you can't use them. It's not a language problem. It's a fear response. Basically, your brain thinks English is a threat. And I was tired of feeling like I was in danger every time I spoke. So I made a quiet decision. Not a big one. Not dramatic. I decided to stop trying to sound perfect. No more long sentences I couldn't control. No more pressure to speak fast. No more pretending to understand everything. Instead, I focused on something simpler, clarity. The next day, I went back to a familiar place, the coffee shop. Same counter. Same smile. What can I get for you? This time, I didn't rush. I want 1 black coffee. And 1 sandwich.
Slow. Clear.
Enough. Sure, she said.
No confusión.
No stress. And something shifted inside me. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to impress. I was just trying to communicate. There's a concept in language learning called comprehensible output. It means speaking in a way that others can understand, even if it's simple, even if it's not perfect. That became my new rule. Not perfect English. Useful English. I need help. Please repeat. I don't understand. These are not weak sentences. They are powerful tools. Because communication is not about sounding smart. It's about being understood. A few days later, I tried something I avoided before, calling customer service again. The same situation that made me give up earlier. But this time, I changed my approach. Short sentences.
Slow pace.
No pressure. Hello. My internet is not working. Can you help me? Please speak slowly. There was a pause. Then the voice on the other side said, "Of course." And just like that, the conversation became manageable. Not easy, but possible. And sometimes possible is all you need. Confidence doesn't come first. Action comes first. Then confidence follows. Psychologists call this the confidence loop. You try something small. You succeed. Your brain feels safe. Then you try again. That's how progress really works. Not in big jumps, but in small, repeated steps. I also started noticing something I had ignored before. Native speakers don't speak perfectly either. They pause. They change their sentences. They correct themselves in real time. But they don't stop. That's the difference. They don't wait for perfect words. They trust imperfect ones. So I gave myself permission to do the same.
Igo, sorry.
I went yesterday. I am tired. I was tired. Not smooth, not polished, but real. And real communication is always better than perfect silence. At night, I continued my simple routine, listening to slow English stories, repeating sentences, speaking quietly, sometimes even whispering. This is my life. I am learning. I am getting better. Simple sentences, but powerful, because repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity reduces fear. Science supports this. The more your brain hears and uses a pattern, the more automatic it becomes. Neural pathways strengthen, reactions slow down, confidence grows. Little by little, English stopped feeling like a wall. It became something else.
A tool.
A bridge. A way forward. Still imperfect. Still challenging. But no longer impossible. And maybe the most important realization? Your English doesn't need to be perfect to change your life. It just needs to be used. Because silence feels safe in the moment, but it keeps you stuck in the long run. And the moment you speak, even slowly, even imperfectly, you create movement. Not away from fear, but through it. And that's where everything begins to change. Small habits, big change. Change rarely arrives like a lightning strike. It's quieter than that. It slips into your life through small, almost boring actions, the kind you don't even notice at first. That's exactly how my English started to improve in Nevada. Not with a big plan. Not with expensive courses. Just with one simple habit I repeated every single day. I listen. I repeat. I try again. 3 short sentences. That was my system. After everything I went through, the divorce, the loneliness, the fear of speaking, I didn't have the energy for complicated strategies. My brain was already tired. So instead of pushing harder, I made things easier. Every morning, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee. Same place.
Same time.
I opened a short English story. Nothing advanced, nothing fast. Just slow, clear sentences. This is a simple story. She walks to the store. He feels sad but keeps going. I didn't rush. I didn't translate every word. I just listened. Then I repeated. At first it felt strange. Talking to myself in a quiet apartment. Speaking slowly. Sometimes incorrectly. But something important was happening behind the scenes. My brain was building patterns. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. It means your brain can change and adapt through repetition. Every time you hear and repeat a sentence, your brain strengthens the connection between sound, meaning, and speech. In simple terms, the more you practice, the easier it gets. But here's the key. Practice doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be consistent. That's why small habits work better than big motivation. Motivation is emotional. It goes up and down. Habits are mechanical.
They stay.
So I stopped asking myself, do I feel like studying English today? And started saying, I just do it. No thinking.
No negotiation.
Just action. At first, my sessions were short. 5 minutes. Maybe 10. That's it. But I did it every day. Even when I felt tired. Even when I felt lazy. Even when I felt like nothing was changing. Because something was changing. I just couldn't see it yet. One morning, something unexpected happened. I was listening to a story and suddenly I understood a full sentence without translating it in my head. She is starting a new life.
No pause.
No mental dictionary. Just understanding. That moment felt small but powerful. Because for the first time, English didn't feel like a puzzle. It felt like a message. That's when I realized something important. Learning a language is not about memorizing words. It's about recognizing patterns. Children don't learn language by studying grammar rules. They learn by hearing the same structures again and again. I want this. I like that. I am happy. Simple patterns. Repeated thousands of times. So, I followed the same idea. Instead of learning 50 new words a day, I focused on using the same simple sentences in different situations. I feel tired. I feel better. I feel okay. Same structure. Different meaning. This made everything easier. And then I added something new, speaking out loud more often. Not just repeating stories, but talking about my own life. I wake up at 7. I drink coffee. I go outside. Basic sentences, but real. At first, I made mistakes. A lot of mistakes. But I didn't stop. Because mistakes are not signs of failure. They are signs of practice. There's a psychological principle called desensitization. The more you expose yourself to something uncomfortable, the less scary it becomes over time. So every time I spoke, even incorrectly, I was training my brain to stay calm. And slowly, the fear started to fade. I also noticed something interesting. My listening improved faster than my speaking. That's normal. Your brain needs more input before it produces output. Think of it like this. You fill a cup before you pour from it. So I kept filling my cup. More listening. More repeating. More simple sentences. And then one day, something clicked again. At the coffee shop, the woman asked me a question I didn't expect. Do you want anything else? For a second, my brain paused. But this time, it didn't freeze. No, that's all. Thank you. Smooth. Natural. Automatic. I didn't prepare that sentence. I didn't practice it that morning. It just came out. That's when I knew the habit was working. Not because I became fluent overnight, but because my brain started to respond without fear. And that's the real goal. Not perfect grammar. Not a big vocabulary. Just the ability to understand and respond calmly. That's what small habits give you. Not fast results, but lasting change. Looking back, nothing I did was impressive. No special talent. No complex system. No perfect discipline. Just simple actions repeated daily. And that's something anyone can do. You don't need hours of study. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to be confident. You just need to start small and continue. Because big change doesn't come from big actions. It comes from small actions done consistently. And over time, those small actions build something powerful. Not just better English, but a stronger version of you. The kind of person who doesn't give up easily. The kind of person who keeps going, even when it's slow. And in the end, that matters more than perfect pronunciation. Because language can open doors, but persistence is what gets you through them. An unexpected meeting. Life doesn't usually knock on your door with a perfect plan. It shows up quietly, often when you're not ready, not confident, and definitely not looking for anything new. That's how I met her. On a completely ordinary day in Nevada, when I was just trying to practice my simple English and survive another quiet afternoon. The place was familiar. A small local park, dry grass, soft wind, and that endless Nevada sky stretching above, like it had no limits. I used to go there with my phone and headphones listening to slow English stories, repeating sentences under my breath. This is a new day. I am learning slowly. I am okay. That day, I sat on a bench and started reading out loud from a short story. My voice was low, careful, almost like I didn't want the world to hear me. She walks alone but feels strong. I repeated the sentence twice. Then I heard a voice. That's a good sentence. I looked up. A woman stood a few steps away, smiling. Not in a polite way, but in a curious, warm way. I wasn't expecting anyone to talk to me, especially not about my English. "Oh, thank you," I said, a little surprised. She nodded. "You're practicing, right?" "Yes, I practice English," I answered slowly. There was a small pause. Not uncomfortable, just new. "My name is Anna," she said. I hesitated for a second, then said my name. That moment felt simple. Just two people introducing themselves. But for me, it was something more. It was the first time in a long time that a conversation started naturally, without pressure, without fear. She sat down on the other side of the bench, not too close, giving space. That small detail mattered more than I expected. "What are you reading?" she asked. I showed her my phone. "A short story for learning English." She smiled. "That's smart." Smart. That word stayed in my head. Because for months, I didn't feel smart. I felt slow. I felt behind. But in that moment, someone saw effort, not weakness. There's a psychological concept called social reinforcement. When someone recognizes your effort, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical linked to motivation and reward. That means one small positive interaction can increase your desire to keep going. And that's exactly what happened. We started talking. Slowly. Carefully. My sentences were short. "I come here every day. I listen and repeat. My English not good." She shook her head gently. "It's good enough. Good enough. Not perfect. Not amazing. Just enough." And for the first time, that felt like permission instead of judgment. She didn't correct every mistake. She didn't interrupt. She listened. And when she spoke a little slower, just enough for me to follow. That's something kind people do. They adjust without making you feel small. We talked about simple things. The weather. The park. Coffee. "I like coffee," I said. "Me too," she smiled. It wasn't a deep conversation. No big topics. No emotional stories. But it was real. And sometimes, real is more powerful than impressive. Minutes passed without me checking the time. That was new. Usually, conversations in English felt like work, heavy, exhausting. But this felt light. Before she left, she said something that stayed with me. "Keep practicing. You're doing better than you think." Better than you think. That sentence repeated in my mind long after she walked away. That night I noticed something different. When I listened to my usual English story, I felt more focused, more connected. Like my brain was saying, "This matters now." Because language is not just about words. It's about people, connection, meaning. And for the first time, English wasn't just something I needed to learn. It became something I wanted to use. The next day, I went back to the same park. Same bench.
Same time.
Part of me wondered if she would be there again.
Not in a romantic way.
Not yet. Just curious. Because when you've been alone for so long, even a small connection feels important. I started reading again. This is my life. I try every day. Then I heard footsteps. You came back, she said. I smiled. Yes, I come every day. She sat down again. This time, the conversation started easier. Not perfect, not smooth, but easier. And that's how it began. Not with a big moment. Not with dramatic music. Just two people, a simple conversation, and a shared space. Sometimes, life doesn't change all at once. It shifts slightly. A new voice in your day. A new reason to speak. A new energy in something that used to feel heavy. Looking back, that meeting wasn't random. It happened at a moment when I was ready, maybe not confident, maybe not fluent, but open enough to try. And that's important. Because opportunities don't always come when you're fully prepared. They come when you're willing. Willing to speak, even if it's slow. Willing to connect, even if it's awkward. Willing to stay, even if it's uncertain. That small conversation in the park didn't change everything overnight, but it changed something inside me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just practicing English alone. I was using it with someone, and that made all the difference. Because language grows faster when it has a purpose. And maybe, without realizing it, I had just found one. Simple English, real connection. Connection doesn't always need perfect words. Sometimes it only needs patience, presence, and a few honest sentences that carry more feeling than grammar. That's what I started to understand the more I talked with Anna in that quiet Nevada park. Our conversations were not impressive, but they were real. And real conversations change you in ways textbooks never can. At the beginning, everything was slow. Not slow like boring. Slow like careful. Slow like meaningful. I go to work in the morning, I said one day, trying to explain my routine. She nodded, waiting, not interrupting. And after work, I come here. Practice English. That's a good routine, she said. Simple exchange. No big vocabulary. No complex grammar. But I felt something different every time we talked. I felt understood. That feeling is powerful. There's a concept in communication psychology called mutual intelligibility. It means both people understand each other, even if the language is not perfect. That's the real goal of communication. Not perfection. Not sophistication. Just understanding. And somehow with simple English we had that. At first, I was still afraid of making mistakes. My brain would stop me mid-sentence. I want to say something, but maybe it's wrong. I said that once, honestly. She smiled. Then say it wrong. I laughed a little. Say it wrong. Yes, she said. That's how you learn. That idea stayed with me. Because most of my fear came from trying to avoid mistakes. But avoiding mistakes also meant avoiding growth. So, I changed my mindset again. Not, I must speak correctly. But, I will speak anyway. The difference is small, but powerful. Our conversations became a kind of daily practice. But it didn't feel like studying. It felt like sharing small parts of life. "What did you do today?" she asked. "I work, and I cook dinner," I said. "What did you cook?" I paused, searching for words. "Rice, chicken, and vegetables." "Sounds good," she smiled. Then she told me about her day. Sometimes I didn't understand everything, but instead of pretending, I learned to say, "Can you repeat? Please speak slowly. I don't understand this word." These sentences became my safety net. And something interesting happened. Every time I used them, the conversation didn't stop. It improved, because clarity builds connection. There's a simple truth most learners forget. People don't expect you to be perfect. They just want to understand you. And when you show effort, they often meet you halfway. That's exactly what Anna did. She didn't correct every mistake. She didn't turn our talks into lessons. She just adjusted, naturally, kindly. That created a safe space. And safety is everything when you're learning. Neuroscience shows that when you feel safe, your brain is more open to learning. Stress decreases. Memory improves. Language flows more easily. But when you feel judged or afraid, your brain shuts down. So, without realizing it, those simple conversations were doing something powerful. They were training my brain to associate English with comfort, not fear. One afternoon, the wind was stronger than usual. Dry leaves moved across the ground. We sat there, talking like always. "I think my English better now," I said slowly. She looked at me and nodded. "It is." I smiled, a little unsure. "Not perfect." She laughed softly. "It doesn't need to be." That sentence felt like freedom, because for so long I believed that improvement meant perfection. But now I understood something different. Improvement means progress. Even small progress. "I understand more," I said. "I speak more. I feel less afraid." Those were my real achievements. Not grammar rules. Not long sentences. Just real change. We also started to share more personal things. Not everything at once. Just small pieces. "I was married before," I told her one day. She didn't react with surprise. Just listened. "I am divorced now." There was a pause. Not uncomfortable. Just respectful. "That must have been hard," she said. "Yes," I nodded. "Very hard." For a moment, I didn't need perfect English. I just needed honesty. And she understood. That's when I realized something important. Language is not only about information. It's about emotion.
Tone.
Presence. You can say, "I'm fine," and feel empty. Or say, "I'm okay," and feel understood. Same level of English. Different depth of connection. As days passed, speaking became easier. Not because I learned everything, but because I stopped holding myself back. I started speaking faster. Still simple, but more natural. "I think this place is peaceful. I like coming here. I feel better when I talk." And those sentences came without long pauses. That's when I noticed the biggest shift. I wasn't translating in my head anymore. I was thinking in English. Not perfectly. Not all the time. But sometimes. And that's a big step. Because when you stop translating, language becomes part of you, not just something you study. That's the real goal of learning English. Not memorizing. Not performing. But living it. Looking back, nothing we said was complicated. No advanced vocabulary. No perfect grammar. Just simple English, used consistently. And yet, those simple conversations did more for me than any textbook ever could. Because they gave English a purpose.
Not just to pass a test,
Not just to sound good, but to connect,
to share,
to understand.
to feel less alone.
And maybe that's the secret no one talks about. You don't need complex English to build real relationships. You just need the courage to speak and the patience to listen. Because in the end, connection is not built on perfect sentences. It's built on honest ones. Cultural differences, different love. Love doesn't just speak a language. It carries a culture. And when two people come from different worlds, even the simplest moments can feel confusing, funny, or unexpectedly deep. That's what I started to notice as my connection with Anna grew in Nevada. Our conversations were still simple, our English still basic, but underneath those words, there were differences we couldn't ignore. Not big problems. Just small, quiet misunderstandings. The kind that make you pause and think, wait, what did that mean? One afternoon, we sat at the same park bench. The sun was softer, the air cooler than usual. I brought coffee, 2 cups. I buy this for you, I said, handing her one. She smiled. That's really nice.
Thank you.
I felt good.
Proud, even.
In my culture, small actions like that mean care, respect. A quiet way to say, I'm thinking about you. But then she said something unexpected. You don't have to do that every time. I paused. Not because I didn't understand the words, but because I didn't understand the meaning. You don't like it? I asked, a little confused. No, I do, she said quickly. I just don't want you to feel like you have to. That moment stayed in my mind, because where I come from, doing something repeatedly for someone you care about is normal. It shows consistency. It shows intention. But for her, it meant something else, maybe pressure, maybe obligation. Same action, different meaning. That's when I realized something important. Cultural differences don't always appear in big traditions or holidays. They show up in small, everyday behaviors.
How you give, how you speak, how you show care.
And if you're not aware of them, it's easy to misunderstand each other. There's a concept in cross-cultural psychology called high context versus low context communication. In high context cultures, people express meaning indirectly through actions, tone, and shared understanding. In low context cultures, people communicate more directly, clear words, clear intentions. I came from a more high context style. Anna came from a more direct one. So sometimes I expected her to feel what I meant, while she expected me to say it clearly. That difference created small moments of confusion. One day she asked me, "Are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine." Simple answer. But she looked at me for a moment and said, "You don't sound fine." I was surprised. "I say I'm fine," I replied. She smiled gently. Sometimes people say fine when they're not. That was new to me. Because for me, "I'm fine" meant the conversation was over. No need to go deeper. But for her, it was just the beginning. So I tried again. "I feel a little tired and a little sad." The words were simple, but they were honest. She nodded. That makes more sense. That moment taught me something important. Language is not just about grammar. It's about honesty. And sometimes being direct is not rude. It's clear. At the same time, she started to understand me better too. There were moments when I didn't say much, when I just sat quietly, looking at the sky or the ground. In my culture, silence can mean comfort. Presence. Not everything needs to be spoken. At first, she would ask, "Is something wrong?" And I would say, "No, I just think." She laughed once. "You think a lot." "Yes," I smiled. "Maybe too much." Over time, she stopped trying to fill every silence. She learned that quiet moments didn't always mean something was wrong. That's how understanding grows. Not by changing who you are, but by learning how the other person sees the world. Our English stayed simple. "I like this place. It's peaceful. I enjoy talking with you." But behind those sentences, there was something deeper building.
Trust.
And trust grows slowly, especially after pain. After my divorce, I didn't trust easily. Not people. Not emotions. Not even myself, sometimes. And when you carry that kind of past, every new connection feels uncertain. Part of me wanted to stay safe.
No risks. No expectations.
But another part of me, quiet but persistent, wanted something more. Not a perfect relationship, just a real one. And real relationships require understanding. Not perfect understanding, but effort. One day, we talked about time. In my culture, being a little late is sometimes normal. Not ideal, but acceptable. Time feels flexible. But for her, time was more structured. "I was waiting for you," she said one day when I arrived 10 minutes late.
"I'm sorry," he replied.
"Traffic." She nodded, but I could see it mattered to her. "I just like being on time," she explained. And that was it.
No argument.
No drama. Just a difference. So I adjusted. Next time, I arrived early. Not because I changed my personality, but because I respected hers. That's what real connection looks like. Not forcing someone to be like you, but meeting somewhere in the middle. And slowly, those small adjustments built something stronger. We laughed more. We understood more. We needed fewer explanations. Because over time, patterns became familiar. "I know what you mean," she would say sometimes. And that sentence felt like progress. Because being understood, especially in a second language, is not easy. But it's powerful. Looking back, our differences didn't push us apart. They taught us. They showed us that love is not just about feeling good. It's about learning, adapting, listening, growing, together. And maybe that's why simple English worked so well for us. Because when your words are simple, your meaning becomes clearer.
No hiding. No confusion.
Just honesty. And in a world full of noise, that kind of clarity is rare. So the differences stayed. Different habits. Different expectations. Different ways of showing care. But instead of becoming problems, they became bridges. Because when two people are willing to understand, even the biggest differences can become something beautiful. Not perfect, but real. And sometimes real love doesn't look like a movie. It looks like two people sitting on a quiet bench, speaking simple English, and slowly learning how to understand each other. Family, children, and new roles. Life doesn't just change when love appears. It becomes more complicated, more meaningful, and sometimes more fragile. That's what I began to feel when Anna slowly introduced me to a part of her life I hadn't seen before, her family and her children. It didn't happen all at once. No big announcement.
No dramàtic moment.
Just a simple sentence one afternoon. I want you to meet my kids when you're ready. That last part stayed with me. When you're ready. Because readiness is a strange thing. You can feel strong in one area of life and completely unsure in another. I was improving my English. I was building a connection. But meeting her children? That felt different. Bigger. More real. I think I am ready, I said slowly, not fully confident, but honest. The day we met, my mind was more nervous than it had been in months. Not because of English this time, but because of responsibility. Children don't listen to your grammar. They feel your energy. We met at a small park, different from our usual one. More color, more noise, laughter in the background. It felt alive. Anna waved at them first. This is the person I told you about, she said. Simple introduction. No pressure. Her children looked at me with curiosity, not judgment, just interest. Hi, I said, raising my hand slightly. Hi, they replied. That was it.
No complicated conversation.
No perfect sentences. Just a beginning. At first, I didn't know what to say. Adults are easier. You can explain, adjust, clarify. But children? They expect something else. Simplicity, presence, and honesty. So I stayed simple. What is your name? How old are you? What do you like? Short questions. Clear words. They answered quickly. Faster than I expected. I didn't understand everything, but I caught enough. Soccer. School. Games. I nodded, smiled, and listened. There's something important about children. They don't expect perfection. They don't analyze your grammar. They respond to tone, to kindness, to attention. And slowly, the tension inside me started to relax. We walked together, talked in short sentences, laughed at small things. At one point, one of them asked me, "Why do you talk slow?" I paused for a second. Then I smiled. Because I learn English. They looked at each other, then nodded. Okay.
No judgment. No awkward silence.
Just acceptance. That moment felt surprisingly powerful. Because adults often make language complicated. They notice mistakes. They compare. They evaluate. But children? They just listen and respond. And that created something new for me. Confidence. Not because my English was perfect, but because it was enough. Over time, I started spending more moments with them. Not long hours. Just small visits.
Walks.
Simple conversations. I help you? I asked once when they were trying to fix a toy. Yes, they said. So I helped. No big words.
No explanations.
Just action. And that's when I realized something important. Communication is not always verbal. Sometimes it's what you do. Helping. Listening. Being there. These actions speak louder than perfect sentences. There's also a psychological shift that happens when you take on new roles. Before, I was just someone learning English. Someone recovering from divorce. Someone trying to rebuild life. But now, I was also something else. A person entering a family. That changes how you think. You become more careful. More present. more responsible. And interestingly, it also changed how I learned English. Before, I learned for myself. Now, I learn for connection. I want to understand more. I want to say more. I want to be clear. Because when children speak, they don't repeat as much as adults. They move fast. They expect you to follow. And if you don't understand, the moment is gone. So my listening improved. Not because I studied harder, but because I cared more. Motivation changed everything. Science supports this too. When learning is connected to emotional meaning, like relationships or responsibility, your brain becomes more engaged. Memory improves. Focus increases. Progress feels more natural. In simple terms, when something matters, you learn faster. And this mattered. Not in a dramatic way. Not like a movie, but in a quiet, steady way. I started to feel included. Not completely. Not instantly. But slowly. One evening, after we spent time together, one of the kids said, "See you next time." Next time. That phrase stayed with me. Because it meant something simple but important. I was not just a visitor anymore. I was someone they expected to see again. That feeling was new. After my divorce, I felt like everything ended. Like I lost my place. My role, my connection. But now, something new was forming. Not replacing the past, but building a future. With simple English. With small moments. With real effort. Of course, it wasn't always easy. There were moments I didn't understand. Times I felt slow again. Situations where I wished my English was better. But I didn't run away from those moments anymore. I stayed. Because staying is what builds trust. And trust is what builds family. Looking back, I didn't become part of that space because I spoke perfect English. I became part of it because I showed up. Consistently. Honestly. Simply. And maybe that's the lesson most people miss. You don't need advanced language to build meaningful relationships. You just need enough language and a lot of sincerity. Because in the end, people don't remember your grammar. They remember how you made them feel. Safe. Heard. Respected. And sometimes, a simple sentence like, "I'm here" carries more weight than a perfect speech. Because being present is the most powerful communication of all. Learning English through love. Something changes when learning is no longer a task but a feeling. That shift is quiet, almost invisible at first. But once it happens, everything becomes easier. That's what love did to my English. It turned practice into something natural, something I didn't have to force anymore. Before Anna, English felt like effort. After Anna, English felt like connection. That difference changed everything. Our conversations were still simple, still slow, still imperfect, but now they had meaning behind them. "I had a long day," she said one evening. I paused, thinking, "I'm sorry you feel tired?" I replied. She smiled. "Yeah, a little tired." Not a perfect sentence, but it worked. And that's the thing. Language becomes easier when your focus is not on the words, but on the person. There's a concept in psychology called emotional engagement. When you care about someone or something, your brain becomes more active. You pay more attention. You remember more. You process faster. So, without realizing it, I was learning faster, not because I studied more, but because I cared more. I wanted to understand her stories. I wanted to respond clearly. I wanted to be present in the conversation. That desire became my new motivation. And motivation driven by emotion is powerful. One night, we talked about simple things again: food, work, daily life. "What do you usually eat for dinner?" she asked. "I cook rice, chicken, sometimes soup," I said. She laughed softly. "Simple and healthy." I smiled. "Yes, simple life." Then she asked something different. "What makes you happy?" That question felt bigger. Not because of the words, but because of the meaning. I took a moment. "I feel happy when I understand more," I said slowly. "And when I talk with you." Silence followed. Not awkward, just quiet. Then she said, "That's really honest." And in that moment, I realized something important. Simple English doesn't limit your emotions. It reveals them. Because when you don't have complex words, you choose honest ones.
No hiding. No pretending.
Just real meaning. That's when English stopped being a subject and became a bridge. We started sharing more. Not everything. Not all at once, but gradually. She told me about her past, her struggles, her hopes. I listened carefully. Sometimes I didn't understand every word, but I understood enough. And when I didn't, I asked, "Can you explain? What does that mean?" Instead of feeling embarrassed, I felt curious. And curiosity is stronger than fear. That's another important shift. Before, I avoided what I didn't understand. Now I moved toward it. Because I had a reason. Love doesn't just make things easier. It makes you braver. One afternoon, we sat in a quiet cafe. It was busier than the park, louder, faster. Conversations everywhere. Before, I would feel overwhelmed in places like that. Too many sounds. Too much English at once. But that day felt different. I focused on her voice. Not the noise. Not the confusion. Just her. "I think your English is improving a lot," she said. I laughed lightly. Slowly. "Slow is good," she replied. And she was right. Because slow learning is deep learning. When you take your time, you understand patterns better. You remember longer. You build confidence naturally. There's a scientific explanation for this too. Slow, repeated exposure strengthens neural pathways more effectively than fast, overwhelming input. That means learning a little every day is better than learning a lot once in a while. And love made that repetition enjoyable. We talked every day. Not long conversations. Just consistent ones. "How was your day?"
I'm tired. I'm okay.
"I feel better now." These simple exchanges became part of my life. And repetition turned them into habits. Then habits turned into ability. One day, I noticed something surprising. I responded to a question without thinking in my first language, directly in English.
No translation. No delay.
Just response. That moment felt small on the outside, but inside it was a breakthrough. Because thinking in English means the language is becoming part of you. Not something external. Not something separate. But something natural. And that's when I realized something deeper. I wasn't just learning English anymore. I was living it. Through conversations. Through emotions. Through connection. And maybe the most unexpected part? I stopped being afraid of mistakes. Because mistakes didn't break the connection. Silence did.
So I chose to speak.
Even when unsure. Even when imperfect. I think this is correct, I said sometimes. She would smile. Close enough. Close enough. That phrase became my new standard. Not perfect. Not flawless. Just close enough to connect. And connection is what matters. Looking back, nothing about this process was traditional. No grammar tests. No long vocabulary lists. No strict study schedule. Just real conversations repeated over time. And yet it worked because language is not just learned through study. It's learned through use, through emotion, through necessity, through relationships. Love didn't replace effort, but it gave effort a purpose. And purpose makes everything stronger. So if you feel stuck learning English, maybe the problem is not your ability. Maybe it's the reason. Because when your reason is strong enough, your method becomes simple. You listen.
You speak.
You repeat. Not because you have to, but
Because you want to.
And when that happens, progress is no longer a struggle. It becomes a natural part of your life. Just like breathing. Just like feeling. Just like love. Healing after the pain. Pain doesn't disappear just because life starts to feel better. It stays quiet, patient, sometimes hidden in the background of your thoughts. That's what I learned as my life in Nevada slowly improved. I was speaking more English. I was building a connection with Anna and her children. I was smiling again. But healing? That was a different journey. Because even when your present feels calm, your past can still whisper. Late at night, when everything was quiet, memories would return. The arguments, the silence, the moment everything ended. I failed. That thought came back more often than I wanted. Not loud, not dramatic, just consistent. And the strange thing about pain is that it doesn't need permission. It shows up when it wants. A smell, a song, a random thought, and suddenly you're back in a moment you tried to leave behind. One night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at nothing. My phone was in my hand, but I wasn't using it. My mind was somewhere else. I tried, but it didn't work, I said quietly. This time, not in my first language. In English. That detail mattered more than I expected. Because expressing pain in a second language creates a small distance. It makes the emotion feel lighter. Not gone, but easier to hold. There's research in psychology that supports this. When people use a foreign language, emotional intensity often decreases. The brain processes feelings differently. It becomes more analytical, less overwhelming. So, without planning it, English became more than a tool for communication. It became a tool for healing. Instead of repeating painful memories in the same emotional language, I started to describe them simply in English. It was difficult. I felt alone. I was hurt. Short sentences. Controlled. Clear. And somehow that helped. Not because the past changed, but because my relationship with it changed. I stopped drowning in emotions and started observing them. That's a powerful shift. Around that time, Anna noticed something. "You seem quiet today," she said one afternoon. "I think about the past," I replied. She didn't rush to fix it. Didn't give advice. Just listened. "That's normal," she said. Normal. That word made a difference. Because pain often feels isolating. like you're the only one carrying it. But when someone says it's normal, it becomes human. I don't want to feel this, I admitted. She nodded. You don't have to rush it. That sentence stayed with me, because I realized something important. Healing is not a race. There's no timeline, no perfect speed, just progress. Some days feel light, some days feel heavy, and both are part of the process. At the same time, I continued my English routine, listening, repeating, speaking. But now, something was different. I wasn't just learning how to talk about daily life. I was learning how to talk about feelings. I feel better today. I feel a little sad. I'm trying to move on. These sentences became part of my vocabulary. Not academic, not complex, but deeply meaningful. And expressing emotions, even in simple English, helped me process them. There's a psychological technique called emotional labeling. When you name your feelings, your brain becomes calmer. The emotional part of your brain reduces activity, and the thinking part becomes stronger. So when I said, I feel sad, I wasn't just speaking English. I was calming my mind. That's when I understood something unexpected. Learning English wasn't separate from my life anymore. It was part of my recovery, part of my growth, part of my healing. One evening, we walked slowly through the park. The sky was soft, almost fading into night. I was afraid before, I said. Afraid of what? She asked. I paused. Afraid to trust again. The sentence came out slowly but clearly. She didn't respond immediately. And that silence felt respectful, not empty. Then she said, that makes sense. Not don't be afraid. Not everything will be okay. Just understanding. And sometimes that's all you need. Because healing doesn't come from someone fixing your pain. It comes from someone accepting it. Over time, I noticed the pain didn't disappear, but it changed. It became quieter, less controlling, less overwhelming, like a scar instead of a wound. Still there, but no longer open. And something else started to grow in its place. Hope. Not a loud, dramatic hope, but a steady, quiet one. I can move forward. I can try again. I can trust slowly. These sentences became part of my inner voice. Not perfect, but real. Looking back, healing didn't happen because everything became easy. It happened because I stopped resisting the difficult parts. I allowed myself to feel and to express, even with simple English. Even with imperfect words. Because you don't need advanced language to heal. You just need a way to tell your story. And sometimes a second language gives you exactly that. A new way to see old pain. A new way to describe old memories. A new way to move forward. Step by step. Sentence by sentence. And maybe that's the quiet truth no one talks about. You don't heal by forgetting your past. You heal by learning how to carry it differently. And for me, English became part of that journey. Not just a language, but a bridge. From pain to peace. A quiet, steady happiness. Happiness doesn't always arrive as excitement. Sometimes it shows up quietly, so quietly you almost miss it. That's what my life in Nevada started to feel like. Not dramatic, not perfect, just steady. And after everything I had been through, steady felt like a miracle. The days were simple. Wake up, drink coffee, go to work,
Talk to Anna.
Spend time with her children. Nothing extraordinary. No big achievements.
But something inside me had changed.
I feel calm, I said one morning, almost surprised by my own words.
Calm.
That was new. For a long time, my life felt like a storm, emotionally, mentally, even physically. There was always something heavy in the background.
Stress. Fear. Doubt.
But now, those feelings were quieter. Not gone. Just softer. That's the thing about healing and growth. They don't erase your past. They reshape your present. And slowly, I started to notice small moments of happiness. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. Laughing at a simple joke. Understanding a full conversation without asking for repetition. Feeling comfortable in silence with someone else. These moments don't look important from the outside, but they're everything. One evening, we sat together at home. The children were playing in another room. The TV was on, but we weren't really watching it. Just sitting.
Talking.
I think my life is different now, I said.
She looked at me.
In a good way? I nodded. Yes, in a good way. There was a pause. Then she smiled. I can see that. That sentence stayed with me. Because sometimes other people notice your growth before you do. And hearing it from someone else makes it real. At that point, my English had improved a lot, but not in the way I expected at the beginning. I didn't know every word. I didn't use complex grammar. I didn't speak perfectly, but I could live in English. I could understand daily conversations. I could express my thoughts. I could connect with people, and that was enough. There's a misconception that fluency means perfection, but real fluency is something else. It's comfort, the ability to speak without fear. The ability to listen without panic. The ability to exist in the language naturally. That's what I had now. And it didn't come from studying harder. It came from living more. Living in conversations. Living in relationships. Living in real situations. That's where language grows. Not in isolation, but in connection. My role in life had also changed. Before, I felt like someone trying to rebuild alone. Now, I felt like part of something. Not just a relationship. A family. It wasn't official. It wasn't labeled. But it was real. I helped with small things. I listened more. I showed up consistently. And over time, those small actions built trust. Trust doesn't need big promises. It needs repeated presence. One day, something simple happened. We were all sitting together, talking about plans for the weekend. One of the kids asked, "Are you coming with us?" I paused for a second. Not because I didn't understand, but because of what the question meant. Not, "Do you want to come?" But, "Are you coming?" Like it was already expected. Like I was already included. "Yes," I said, smiling. "I'm coming." That moment stayed with me longer than I expected. Because after everything, after the divorce, the loneliness, the feeling of not belonging, that simple question meant something deeper. I had a place again. Not the same as before. Not replacing the past, but something new and something real. That's when I understood something important about happiness. It's not about big moments. It's about consistency. Feeling safe more often than anxious. Feeling connected more often than alone. Feeling hopeful more often than lost. And that balance creates peace. At the same time, I didn't forget my journey. I still practiced English, still listened to stories, still repeated sentences. But now it felt different. Not like effort, but like maintenance. I want to keep improving, I said one day. She nodded. You are improving. I smiled. Still learning. Always, she replied. And she was right. Learning doesn't stop. Not language. Not life. There's always something new to understand. New words. New experiences. New emotions. But now, I wasn't afraid of that. Because I knew I could handle it. Not perfectly, but steadily. Looking back, I didn't find happiness in a big event. I found it in small, repeated moments. Conversations that felt natural. Silence that felt comfortable. Days that felt balanced. And maybe the most important part? I stopped chasing happiness. I allowed it to grow. Slowly. Quietly. Naturally. Just like my English. And maybe that's the real lesson. You don't need a perfect life to feel happy. You just need a life that feels real. Where you can speak honestly. Where you can be understood. Where you can belong. Even if your sentences are simple. Even if your past is complicated. Because happiness is not about how perfect your life looks. It's about how peaceful it feels when you're living it. A new beginning, not an ending. Endings can feel final. Like a door closing with no way back. That's how my life once felt. After the divorce. After the loneliness. After the long days of confusion and self-doubt. It all seemed like something had ended completely. But standing where I am now, I see something different. It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning I didn't recognize at the time. That's the strange thing about life. When you're inside the difficult moment, everything feels like loss. But later, when you look back, you start to see direction. You start to see how one moment quietly led to another. Nevada didn't feel like home at first. It felt unfamiliar, distant, almost cold. But now, it feels like the place where I rebuilt myself. Not quickly, not perfectly, but honestly. And honesty became the foundation of everything. I stopped pretending I was okay when I wasn't. I stopped hiding behind silence. I stopped waiting to feel ready. Instead, I started doing something simple. I showed up every day, even when I felt tired, even when I felt unsure, even when I made mistakes. That consistency changed everything. Because growth doesn't come from big, dramatic actions. It comes from small steps repeated over time. And that's exactly how my English improved. Not from a single breakthrough, but from daily effort. Listening to stories. Repeating sentences. Speaking without fear. At first, those actions felt uncomfortable. Then they felt familiar. And eventually they felt natural. That's the path of learning. Discomfort, familiarity, confidence. And the same pattern applies to life. The same pattern applies to healing. The same pattern applies to starting over. One afternoon, I sat alone with a notebook in front of me. Something I hadn't done in a long time. I wrote a simple sentence. My life is different now. Then I paused. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I realized how true it was. Different doesn't mean perfect. Different means changed. And change means movement. For a long time, I felt stuck. Emotionally. Mentally. Even physically. But now, I was moving forward. Slowly,
steadily,
intentionally. And that's enough. We often believe that starting over requires something big. A big decision. A big opportunity. A big moment. But in reality, starting over begins with something small.
a choice,
A simple decision to continue. To try again. To speak one more sentence. To listen one more time.
to take one more step.
That's how everything begins. And for me, that beginning didn't look impressive. It looked quiet. Just like my life now. One evening, I sat with Anna and her children again. The same room. The same simple environment. But I felt different. More present. More comfortable. More myself. You seem really relaxed, she said. I smiled. I think I found my rhythm. She nodded. That's important. And it is. Because when you find your rhythm, life stops feeling like a struggle. It starts feeling like something you can move with, not against. That doesn't mean everything is easy. There are still challenges. Still moments of doubt. Still days that feel heavy. But now I know something I didn't know before. I can handle them. Not because I'm stronger than before, but because I understand myself better. And understanding creates stability. At the same time, my relationship with English continued to grow. But now it wasn't something I focused on constantly. It became part of my daily life. Like breathing. Like thinking. Like feeling. I watched videos and understood them. I had conversations without overthinking. I expressed ideas more clearly. Not perfectly, but naturally. And that's the goal. Not perfection, but natural communication. Because language is not about impressing people. It's about connecting with them. And connection is what changed my life. Not just with others, but with myself. I started to trust my own voice. Even when it was simple. Even when it wasn't perfect. Because my voice carried meaning. And meaning is more important than complexity. Looking back, I didn't just learn English. I learned something deeper. I learned how to rebuild. How to sit with discomfort. How to move through pain. How to grow without rushing. And maybe the most important lesson? I learned that starting over is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of courage. Because it takes courage to try again. To open up again. To believe again. Even after everything. So if you're watching this and feeling like something in your life has ended, maybe it has. But that doesn't mean your story is over. It might just mean you're at the beginning of something new. Something quieter. Something slower. Something more real. And maybe that's exactly what you need. You don't have to rush. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to continue. One sentence at a time. One step at a time. One day at a time. Because new beginnings don't always look like excitement. Sometimes they look like peace. And peace is not the end of the journey. It's the place where a new one begins. And maybe the most important part of this story isn't about English. It's about what happens when you refuse to give up, quietly, consistently, even when no one is watching. Because the truth is, this wasn't just a story about learning a language. It was about rebuilding a life. From silence to expression. From fear to connection. From pain to something that finally feels like peace. And if you're still here, watching this moment, then maybe a part of the story is yours too. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're starting over. Maybe you're learning something new and wondering if it's even worth it. So, here's a simple question to carry with you after this video ends. What if you're closer than you think, and this is the moment everything begins to change? Not tomorrow,
Not someday.
but right now. Because change doesn't always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like one small decision.
To keep going.
To try again. To believe just a little more. And if this story gave you even a small feeling of hope, clarity, or motivation, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel for more real-life English learning stories, slow conversations, and emotional journeys that help you learn English naturally and rebuild confidence step by step. Like this video so more people who feel lost or stuck can find it. Comment below, where are you in your journey right now? Because you're not alone in this. And your story? It might be just getting started. See you in the next video, where something small might change everything again.